This is Launch One with Mason Springer. I'm Mason Springer, and it is Lancaster week, or the week after Lancaster, actually. So I just attended Lancaster Archery Classic. That is, they call it the most electrifying tournament in the world, and I would definitely agree with that description. There are archers from bow hunter level all the way up to the greatest in the world at this event. I mean, it is super user-friendly. I think that this is a lot of people's favorite tournaments. And me and Chuck actually met there. And so we're going to go over that a little bit. But starting off, we're joined with Chuck Durnil. Chuck is on Facebook. That's kind of where I recognized him from. He is Chuck Competitive Archer. You might have seen on there. And he's got quite the story. I mean, the first, 2 or 3 minutes that we started talking, Chuck, I mean, I'm like instantly, I got to get this guy on the podcast. So, I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Chuck? How'd you get into archery?
Believe it or not, I'm ex-military, and so when I got out of the service, I was diagnosed with depression and extreme PTSD. And so I did the therapist thing and all that at the VA, and they put me on all kinds of medications and all that. And I used to really love to hunt. I would miss work and call in sick to work or whatever just so I could go deer hunting. After I got back and got out of the service, it got to the point I just didn't want to be around any firearms. I mean, I owned them and everything. I just didn't want to be around them. Had no use for them. But I really liked to hunt. And so it was suggested to me from a friend of mine to get into bow hunting. And so I really didn't have any interest in it. And then I started doing some research and talking to people that I know that actually did it. And then I went to a pawn shop and bought a bow from them for $50. And then it blew up from there. And then I started getting into the tournament side of it. I met Scott and Dee Starnes. They used to be pro shooters for PSE. And I ran into them and got to talking to Scott and found out that he only lived like 7 miles from me. And so I ended up doing some local tournaments and stuff that, he would tell me about and everything. And in my practice sessions, I got to realizing that when I was on the line and I was shooting, I had to focus solely on that shot. And so I realized that when I was doing that, that the PTSD stuff wasn't bothering me. The depression wasn't bothering me. And so I started getting into it more and more and more and more. Well, when I first got into archery, I was taking 14 different medications for my PTSD and the depression. And after, I think it was like a year, maybe a year and a half, I got off all the meds. And to this day, I still don't take any meds for it. I don't need it anymore.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing. Wow. Well, I'll start off with thanks for your service, Chuck. I mean, that's amazing. And that archery helped you out so much. I mean, that's quite the story. I know that, a lot of people would agree that it helps you focus. It's very calming, but yeah, you've kind of taken that to the next level. That's amazing. So you said you
Well, and,
started out,
well,
go
and the
ahead.
thing is, though, it really did help me out in more ways than one. Because
Really?
I don't have to take the medications no more. I don't really have a big issue with the PTSD and the depression anymore. But on the flip side of that, now it's what I do for a living. Uh,
Yeah.
I turned pro 2019, and then I actually turned pro in April of 2020. Then I think it was like the end of 20. I want to say it was end of 2021 that Martin Archery obtained Obsession bows. They bought Obsession bows. And so they moved their facility down here to Georgia where the Obsession factory was. And they offered me a job to be a bow builder for Martin Archery. And so I took the job. And so I moved from
Hmm.
Indiana down to Georgia to be a bow builder for Martin Archery. And I did that for 2
Wow.
years. And then I quit working there. And now I actually run an archery shop in Perry, Georgia called Broken Arrow Outfitters. So I've literally gotten off all the medications. I don't have the issue with the PTSD and stuff anymore, but I've turned it into a career. So now it actually benefited me into getting into it.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you've got the full wraparound there. So, yeah, I mean, from rifle hunter to now you own your own bow shop. You're
No, I
going
don't
to,
own it. I don't own it. I just run it.
you run it. Okay. Yep. And you said Broken Arrow Outfitters.
Yes, sir.
And then I see you do some Facebook stuff too. We briefly touched on that when we were talking at Lancaster, but what's your thoughts behind that, and how does that wrap into the whole bow shop job?
Well, I started doing the little Facebook videos and stuff like because I ran into issues with my shooting. I developed target panic real bad, and so I've been doing these little videos and putting out things that I've tried, things that I'm doing that have helped or didn't help. And the reason that I started doing that is because I know I'm not the only one that's dealing with this. I know that I'm not the only one that has the problem like I have. And if there's one thing that I could put up in my video that will help a fellow archer out to get rid of their target panic or whatever issue it is that they're having, then it's a win. If I can
Yeah.
help one, it's a win.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's why I think a lot of people do what they do on the social media with archery and stuff. Like that's a big reason why, we're having this podcast right now. But yeah, that's pretty amazing. So, going back to when you started bow hunting, you bought the pawn shop bow. Where did you first learn how to shoot that bow? Where did you learn that from? Just on your own? Did you have
Yep.
somebody help you there?
Nope. I taught myself.
Okay.
When I got the bow, I actually bought one of those portable bow presses you can get from Lancaster Archery Supply. It's the one with the ropes and a 550 cord, the two little metal hooks. I bought one of them and literally tore the bow apart, completely apart, and then reassembled it so that I could see how it all worked and what each piece does and why it is the way it is.
Yeah. And I'll stop you right there. I think that everybody needs to do that with their bows. I mean, there's so many people. I know guys that are, shooting target stuff and they're shooting better than me and they've never tied their own D loop. I'm like, "What?" And that kind of blows my mind, but that's awesome that like instantly pick up portable bow press and tear it apart, see how it works. I'm just that type of person. I like to know how things work, especially if I'm going to be shooting it.
Well, and the thing about it is I did it because I'd never been around it before. I didn't know anybody that really did, the tournament format type stuff. I had friends that were bow hunters, but they were like the people you were just talking about. They have an issue with their bow. They don't fix it. They take it to a bow shop and they pay somebody else to do it. I wanted to learn to do it myself. And so I literally okay, let's add a twist to this string to see what it does. Well, that made things really bad. So let's take it back out and try something else. And that's how I learned how to do it. And then I started doing little posts on Facebook. Wasn't videos, but they were posts on Facebook. And I started getting messages from people everywhere, Australia, overseas. They were messaging me, "Hey, I've got this issue with my bow. How can I fix this?" And I would tell them, "Well, try this and see if it works." That's how it all took off, and that's actually how I ended up getting contacted from Martin Archery to be a bow builder for them, because at the time I was shooting a Martin bow, and so it literally it blew up big time for me in doing that. And so I got away from doing that stuff because there's so many people out there now that are putting out all the different types of information on how to set up bows properly, how to tune them, or different things of that nature that deal with bows. What I've run into is most of the time you go to the videos, they're only talking about, okay, well, I did this, and they'll post a perfect score target, or I made this 80-yard shot, and they show a picture of the target with the arrow dead center. And so I got to thinking about it, and we're not machines. We're human. We got to post the bad along with the good. And
Yes.
so if you get on my Facebook, you'll see targets where I've got 6s and 7s and 9s out the yin yang. I mean, I don't try to hide any of it because, like I said, I'm human. I'm not a machine. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. And so, well, unless you're Mr. Perfect Mike Schlosser, but even he misses. I mean, I just watched a shoot down. It was between him and Matthias Fullerton. They were overseas and doing one of them European tournaments, and he shot a 9, and
Mhm.
Matthias Fullerton donated the baby tent and won the tournament. He won the gold. So even Mr. Perfect misses. And there's a stigmatism out there that, well, you're a pro, you don't miss. Well, that's not true. We all miss.
Absolutely.
The Vegas shoot, Sergio Ponier, he gets started on his bow back in the shoot off, and his release broke. Sent an arrow down range. It counted as a fired shot. That's a
Yeah.
miss.
Yep.
Curtis Broadnax, I believe it was at Foley. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, in the shoot off at Foley, blanked the target. Now, whether he misset his sight, tripped his release early, nobody knows, but he missed. That's the point.
Yeah,
We're not
absolutely.
perfect. Nobody's perfect. And so I want to put out an honest social media my stuff that I put out on social media, I want it to be honest and true. I don't want it to be only posting the perfect scores. That's where the misconception is, well, you're a pro, you never miss. Well, that's not true.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. And now that I think about it, I'm kind of guilty of that too, without even realizing, thinking back, like I really only ever post my rounds that are good or my rounds that are, average for me. I don't think I've ever really posted a bad round, but now that you think about it, like I probably should. There's no reason not to.
Right. And here's my thing. If you make a bad shot, you make a bad shot. I mean, who cares? Own up to it. That's just the way I look at it. Own up to it. But if you're going to post that target, explain to them, okay, I missed, but this is what happened. Like on
Yeah.
mine, a lot of my misses, especially here lately, is due to target panic. And I've got it really, really bad. And so I've been working on some things to work through it, and it is getting better, but it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take me a while to get through what I'm going through. And
Yes.
I've tried to explain it a couple times in videos and stuff that I posted on my Facebook. And people says, well, blank bell. Here's the thing. Blank belling, it works great for working on your form and working on your release to get used to the way your release is activated, the way you activate your release. Blank
I
belling is
agree.
perfect for that. But for what I'm going through with my target panic, it's a mute point because I could literally stand there all day and hold my bow at full draw and stare at a blank bell and I can execute my shot with no problem. My issue is when I'm staring at the target and I'm bringing the pin in to put it in the middle and my eye catches it. And as soon as my eye catches it, my mind's fire and I'm executing the shot.
Absolutely.
I've got I was talking to a friend of mine and he actually explained it to me like this. It's a glitch in the matrix. So I have a glitch in my matrix that it's short circuiting and telling my thumb to fire before my eye lets the pin get to the middle. And so that's what I'm working on. And blank belling won't help that.
Yeah.
If you see the pin hit the spot, boom, it fires.
I definitely agree. I know lots of people have always, preached, for lack of better terms, they've preached, blank bail, blank bail, blank bail. And I've tried it and I can't seem to find any reason to blank bail when I have the opportunity to shoot in an actual spot. I seem to get a lot more out of, shooting a Vegas face or shooting a 5-spot target than, shooting no target at all. Now, if I am specifically working on my follow through, whatever it is, like you said, there's where the blank bail can come in handy a little bit. But at that point, you might as well be shooting a spot too. And that leads me into, you always want to score your arrows too. Like I try not to shoot any shots without writing down what the score was, no matter what. And that's just kind of like a accountability on myself. Like I don't want to, even if I'm practicing, my follow through or, adjusting my tune on my bow, whatever it is, I always score the arrow no matter where it is, just for accountability and kind
And
of
you shouldn't do that.
really.
Yeah, you should not score your arrows every single time you shoot. Let's just say, for example, you shoot 5 times or 5 days a week, score 1 round sometime in that week, but don't
Okay.
score every arrow every single round. That's going to lead you into target panic because you're going to get to where, okay, yesterday I shot a Vegas face and I shot a 327 X's. You're going to get to the point to where you're going to do what I call micro aiming. And you're going to be focusing so hard just to hit that little X that you're going to end up with target panic because of it.
Okay.
So just go in and shoot your round, just relax. Now, if you go to my videos, you'll hear me several of my videos where I say, I don't care about the score, but then I'll post a picture of a target and it's got a score written on it. I'm not keeping score. But if I miss and I hit a 9 and I'm shooting a Vegas face, then I know, and I only hit the 1-9, then I know I shot a 299.
Yeah.
So I'll
Okay.
write the date and then I write that down. I don't keep track of the X's, but I will write that down. You see what I'm saying?
So, yes, I understand your viewpoint, and I'll tell you my viewpoint on it. So, when I score every arrow that I shoot, I can see where probably the majority of people, like you say, would have the mindset of, I just shot a 300 with 27 X's, and then like there's more pressure to shoot that same score again the next day. I look at it. Yesterday, I just shot a 300 with 27 X's. If I trust my shot and, make that good shot, there's no reason why I can't do it again today. So, and the biggest thing, and that's even a small reason, the biggest thing for me why I like to score rounds is so that when I do get into a competition and I'm scoring, like seeing that score doesn't freak me out.
Well,
Now,
that's where the scoring, like once every, like I said, if you're shooting 5 days a week, just score one day. But here's another way to do it without actually keeping score. Because you want to keep track, because you want to keep track of how you're doing. Here's another way to do it without keeping score. Keep the target.
yeah,
If you clean a round, you're gonna be able to tell you cleaned that round by the hole your arrow leaves in the spot, right?
yes,
If you've got one that's, let's just say it's a 3/4 shaft, 2 o'clock 10 on the top spot, and that was the only one you missed, you keep that target. Now your goal is to get that one inside of the 10. When you do that, you throw that one with the 10 half shaft 10 in the trash and you keep the other target. You don't have to keep score to be able to keep track of how you're doing throughout your practice sessions.
yes. I like that. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Because
Absolutely.
the idea of practicing is to get better in your aiming, your form, your shot execution. That is your goal in practicing, right? So why does the score matter? It's what the target looks like once that last arrow is fired. That's all that really matters. The score is a byproduct of that.
That makes sense. Yep, I can definitely see that. So, when have you ever like maybe you're testing different releases, a thumb button versus a hinge or whatever it is, stabilizer weights. Do you ever shoot around and then, look at the holes on your target or whatever it is and then shoot another round with a different setup and, kind of compare, contrast and see what you're doing there? Like how
Do,
the
but I do, but I don't make any changes. For example, you brought up the stabilizer weights. I went through this and it literally took me 2 weeks to get it to do what I wanted it to do. So I'll make a change on my bow and I'll shoot it that day. And I will keep that target. This is where keeping the targets come in at. I will keep that target. And then the next day when I go to shoot, I won't make any changes to the bow. I just pick it up and start shooting it the same way I left it when I put it down. And I'll shoot another full round. The idea of making the changes is you want your bow to feel the same a week from now as it did the day you made the changes. And
yes.
so I will literally shoot, for 2, 3, 4 days after I made a change. And then I look at my targets to see in comparison, okay, this is what it did on day one. This is what it did my final day. This ain't going to work.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, and
I think
so
it's
I will make a change then. And then I'll do the same thing again. I'll shoot, 3 or 4 days and then I compare the targets because I want to be able to just grab my bow and be able to shoot it today. And then a month from now, I want to be able to just grab that bow and shoot it the exact same. Does that make
yes.
sense? I want it to feel the same. I want the shot to break the same. And if you keep making changes every single day, whether it be weights, draw length, peep height, E-loop length, your timing, twisting your cables to advance both your cams or retard both your cams, all that, you can't get a feel of what the bow is actually going to be like if you made a change today and then you go in tomorrow and make a change and then start shooting it again. You're not going to get a true evaluation of the previous change you made.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's more often than not like I'll make a change in my stabilizer weight or whatever it is, and right off the bat, it feels great. Oh my gosh, I'm going to shoot more X's with this. And then, the next day you pick it up and it's just not good at all. And so you got to change it back to how it was. I'm kind of one that, like you, I don't like to change a whole lot. Once I get my bow set up, once I get my release set up, like it's set up and I'm just working on me from then on out.
Right. And here's the thing. You can make a change, and let's just use the stabilizer weight thing again. You can make a change and you'll make a few shots and it's just not quite right. And you subconsciously, you will change something. You'll change the pressure, you'll put a little more heel pressure in or a little more toe pressure into the grip, or you'll pull just a little bit harder than you normally would or do. And then all of a sudden it's shooting lights out. And you subconsciously did that. So you're shooting the rest of the day and you're literally just pounding, pounding, pounding. But then you come in the next day and you go to draw that bow back and you fire that first arrow and it hits, 11:30 in the sixth ring. And you're like, whoa, what happened? So you can't, I'm not going to say you can't, you shouldn't, make a change today, shoot it today, and then go in tomorrow and then make another change. Give
Yes.
it a few full rounds over a period of a couple days, then make a decision on, yes, this worked, or no, it made it worse, and go from there.
Yes, I definitely agree. This hunting season, actually, my plan was to shoot my buck. I live in Ohio, so our season starts at the end of September. My goal was to shoot a deer and get tagged out in the first couple weeks of season. That way I had plenty of time before indoor season even came around to do things like that. Make a small change in my stabilizer weight and then not change anything else for, several days afterward. That way I can really, vet my system and, find out what works exactly like you're saying. But I like to give myself plenty of time. I'm not one that changes releases halfway throughout a tournament. I saw several guys do that at Lancaster actually, and that kind of blows my mind.
Paige Pierce, or not Paige Pierce, but Heather Gordon actually did a video where she was talking about the different releases that she uses, why she uses them, and all that. And I shoot the goat, and so it's literally a hinge or a thumb button, and it's the same release. You just activate it and use it a little differently. Well, what I found is by switching one of my goats over to a hinge, that I can't get it to operate and shoot like I do the thumb button, even though I'm executing them both the same way. So, like, I'll put my thumb around my peg on the thumb button, but I don't apply the pressure with my thumb. I'm literally at full draw and I'm pulling and rotating my hand like you would with a hinge, which applies the pressure to the thumb button and makes it go off.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense. I know that I actually shoot a two finger. It's a Carter release, and it's a thumb button, and I just get back there and kind of like you're saying, with two fingers, you don't really have quite enough meat there to rotate it into your thumb. So I kind of like hook it on there and get a little bit of preload is what a lot of people call it, and just pull through, and when you're hooked around your thumb, things just kind of stretch out. I don't know exactly how it works, but just by pulling back, it fires, and it's giving me some clean breaks. But yeah, I think that being consistent with your release is really important too. I think I've been shooting this release for probably a year and a half now, and I have not changed a thing.
I bought the goat. I actually bought it in London, Kentucky when it was released. That like they released it at the ATA that year, and then I hadn't been anywhere to buy one of them, and then I went to the ASA in London, Kentucky, and I went to True Ball and I bought one. Then I took it over to the. I actually borrowed one, went over to the practice bags and shot it a few times. I like this one, and so I went back and I bought one, and then I just put it in my quiver and then went and finished out the shoot. But as soon as the shoot was over with and I got home, it came out and my other release went, because I was using a wrist strap trigger release,
Okay.
and
Yep.
so it went away, and I've been using the goat ever since. I got 5 of them now.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. So what's your bow arrow release setup right now?
What do you mean?
As far as like target stuff, like which bow are you using? Arrows for indoor?
Okay, so I literally have 3 different bows set up to shoot indoor with, but they're all shooting a different arrow. I've got a Concept X37, got it set up to shoot Super Drive 27s. I've got a Concept X40 that's set up to shoot the X23s, and just, what was it, Wednesday, I set up one of my other Concept X40s to shoot the X. That's actually the bow I've been shooting the last couple of days. But then I've got another Concept X37 set up for 3D to shoot, and I shoot the Super Drive 25s. And then I just got another Concept X37 70-pound, and I'm gonna be setting it up to shoot the X10 Parallel Pros for shoots like redding and things like that.
Yes, yes, and that's the 3.2s?
No, I've got just the 4.
Okay, yeah, the 4. Yep, nice. So what's the idea behind having 3 different bows set up for indoor? What's the advantage there?
Inside outs. If I ever make it to one of the shoot-offs and they like indoor nationals, the first round is just regular scoring, but then it goes to inside outs. Well, it's a little easier to get a 23 inside out of that 1.25" circle than it is a 27.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yes, I actually just yesterday, 2 days ago, I built my first set of 2312s, the X23s,
Mhm.
or no, 2315, sorry. And I set them up, and like, I think I shot more inside outs in a round than I ever had before. And it wasn't that I was necessarily shooting any better. It's just that, it's easier to get one inside out like that. And the first thing that came to mind was, if I ever get in a shoot down that needs to be inside out, I might just bring these, because they're big enough that when they're scoring regular, you can still catch some lines with 23s, but when they switch to inside out, you got a little bit more wiggle room there. I like that.
What well, and really the only tournament that you really gotta worry about an arrow diameter and catching lines is the Lancaster shoot, because the X counts as an 11. Every other tournament where you shoot, that style of a target, it's just an X. So you don't have to worry about hitting the X. You just gotta worry about hitting the 10. You shoot like Vegas. You shoot a perfect round in Vegas, it's a 300. Who cares how many X's you hit? You hit a 900, you're going to the shoot off. It's not until the shoot off that the X's count, because then the baby X becomes the 10. But
Yes.
and then like this, what was it, last year, is where they went to inside out of the baby X. It can be done with a 27, but you literally have like millimeter between the line and your shaft, whereas you've got a much bigger gap between a 23 and the line. So
Yes.
you stand a better chance of getting a 23 inside out than you do a 27. But I have found that with the 23s, it's a lot easier to tune those arrows to shoot off of a bow than a 27s, because it is such a big, stiff, heavy arrow. It's a lot harder to get them tuned as well. I'm not saying you can't get them tuned, because you can. I have. But it's a lot more work to get it done.
Yes, I agree. What X23s are you shooting, and like, what's your draw length and poundage?
Okay,
Point weight.
I'm running for the Super Drive 27s. I'm only running 55 pounds, because they're super fast, because they're such a light arrow. I'm running 150 grain point in it, 3.5-inch Q2I vanes, 3 fletch left helical. The X23s, I'm running the 2315, same as you, a 250 grain point from Jesse Broadwater, the 3.5-inch Q2I vanes on it, and the bow I'm shooting is 60 pounds. My X27 12s, it has a 300 grain point, same 3.5-inch Q2I, 3 fletch left helical, but on that one I'm running 61 pounds.
Okay. What's your draw length?
29 inches.
Okay. So the 23s that I just set up I have a 28.5-inch draw, and I have 200 up front right now. These are the 23 fins, and they're cut 2 inches in front of the riser. I couldn't tell you what the actual arrow length is, and they seemed pretty good just from shooting them one day. Now I've still got a lot of tuning to do to figure out if they're too stiff or whatnot. But I actually just had posted on Facebook yesterday. I'm just wanting to see what everybody's setup was on those 23s, what you guys are getting them to tune at.
What I did with mine is I took 2 of them. I built them as far as vanes and nocks and all that. But all I did to start was I took both those arrows and I just literally cut 2 inches off the end of it, glued in a point, and just shot it, see what it did. Cut a 1/2 inch off of it, reglue the point, shoot it, see what it did. And that's the way I did mine to get them close to where I wanted. When I got them really close, then I went from cutting a 1/2 inch off down to just literally cutting a 1/4 inch off. And then when they got super close to the way I wanted it, then I did the rest of the tuning with my bow and the arrow rest.
Yes. Yep. That makes sense. So actually, I'm kind of in the same process right now. Right now, I am trying to get them bare shaft tuned. I'm not sure if you do that or not, but
Nope.
okay.
No, and let me explain to you why I don't.
Let's hear it.
You could take, like if you got access to a, one of the last chance presses, take the nock out of the arrow and take the point out of the arrow. So you only have just the arrow shaft. Hold it in there and then slowly crank and close it up on there until it just starts to bend. You just want it to just start to flex. And then measure from the floor to the highest point on that arrow and mark it. Then fletch that arrow and do the exact same thing. And when you do that, your mark is going to be in a different location.
Okay. You mean, what do you mean a different location?
Where your high point, when the arrow starts to flex, okay? Here, yeah, I'll use this piece of leather. So when you put it in the press, the arrow is going to flex. When it starts to flex, that's all you want to do. Measure from the floor to the highest point of that flex and put a mark on the arrow. Then take that arrow and fletch it like you're going to for when you're shooting it.
Okay.
Stick it back in there and do the exact same thing and just till it just starts to bend. And where you put that mark at, the high point of the arrow is actually going to be in a different location.
Really?
Yeah, because when you add vanes or a wrap to the back end of the arrow, you're actually stiffening up that section of the arrow.
Okay. Yep. I see what you're saying. That makes sense. Yeah.
And
I've never
so
heard of
you're
that.
changing that flexing point on the back end of it. Instead of it flexing way back here, now it's starting to flex up here because you stiffened this section up.
Yes.
That's going to
Okay.
change this. Well, when you do that, that changes the way the arrow flies.
Yes, that makes sense. So, well, anybody listening to this, go and play back the video so you can see what Chuck just did there. But that's interesting. I've never thought of that. I've heard of people using like electrical tape and wrapping it around the back of the arrow to make the weight of the shaft match bare shaft to fletched, which I would think that would stiffen up the rear end a little bit, but
It does.
I've never experimented with it though. That's really interesting.
But it's still going to change the way the arrow flies. Because on an arrow you're actually going to shoot, you got the vanes. Yeah, stiffen that area up and you've got that much weight added. Same as you do with like electrical tape. You can put electrical tape on there to match the amount of weight. The difference is now you've got a vane that sticks up that creates drag as it flies. This tape doesn't have that. It's not going to fly the same.
Yes, absolutely. So, how are you tuning your indoor arrows? Are you line tuning or just paper tuning?
I will do a paper tune, but I'm not worried about an absolute perfect bullet hole. I'll adjust everything and get it really close. But then I do line tuning where I'll go like for indoor, I don't do it so much at any distance because I'm only shooting 20 yards. So I will line tune at 20 yards. And when I say line tune, I literally use a piece of D-loop material. I have a D-loop string that hangs vertical on on the target bell, and I will adjust my arrow rest and my sight until I get it to. It doesn't actually have to hit the line, but if it's touching it, I'm good.
Okay.
Because that at 20 yards, that is very, very repeatable with an arrow. And then for my sight mark, I'll run that same D-loop horizontal, and I'll set my 20-yard mark to that.
Okay. So walk me through that process a little bit more in detail on your line tuning. You start with your left and right, right? Is that
Yep.
what you said?
Yep.
Okay. So you've got your string hung straight up and down.
Yes.
You shoot, and what are you looking for on your first shot? Impact, is it left, right, on the line?
That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
If it impacts to the left, I will check my center shot to make sure my center shot is, it doesn't have to be exact, but I want it as close to 13/16 to the center of that arrow as I could possibly get it. If I've moved that arrow rest for my paper tune, let's just say, for example, I had to move my arrow rest to the left, away from the riser, to get a really super close bullet hole. But then when I shoot that arrow at 20 yards, it's hitting 4 inches to the left. I really don't want to move my arrow rest if it's super close to the 13/16. I will move my sight. But if my arrow rest is like, let's say it's 9/16 or, a real good ways out to the left, I will move it closer to the 13/16 and move that arrow rest back in, and which will in turn move my arrow in closer to my string. Once I'm really close there, then I'll just adjust my sight.
Okay.
Because
So,
all I'm worried about when my arrow comes off, I don't want my arrow kicking real hard one direction or the other, up, down, left, right, or whatever. I want my arrow to come off as straight as possible. But if my arrow is literally, if this is my arrow rest and my arrow is at rest and my arrow is pointed like this to get a bullet hole, that ain't right. I'm reshimming my cam to move it so that I can move my knocking point and get more centered.
yes.
If you
Okay.
do that, then your arrow's going to come off straight. Then it's just a matter of fine tuning your left and right with your rest and or your sight. At 20 yards, it's not that critical on your arrow rest if your arrow is coming off straight.
Okay, so on the concept deck specifically, you're looking for. I like to, when I pick up a bow, I like to, when it's at rest, I've got an arrow knocked. I like to look down the string, down the arrow, and see if my arrow's sitting on the rest, like it's a lizard tongue or whatever. Does my arrow line up with like my pin in my sight or the dot? Because a lot of times, like the bow will be sighted in, but your sight might be off to the left or off to the right of the arrow. Is that what you're trying to eliminate?
Yes,
Okay.
because then I don't I don't stand like the normal person does that shoots. I don't have that open stance. I have a very closed stance when I shoot, so I'm literally perpendicular to the target. I'm literally square to the target. So when I draw back and I'm set in, I'm literally square to the target and the string is in the middle of my nose. It runs down and my hand is always, I use this joint with my thumb button. I use this joint right on the corner of my jawbone and my index finger runs right along the bottom of my jaw. So when I'm anchored, I'm literally like this, which puts me in a straight line with my target and my arrow. Well, if my sight is off to one side or the other, then like this would be my arrow rest, this would be my sight. I literally have to move my bow, twist or torque my bow to get them to line up. Well, now that these are lined up, my arrow is pointed off one side or the other.
You mean, okay, so are you talking about like the torque in the bow is, I know that, so
Okay,
for,
let me explain it to you like this.
okay,
Next time you pick up your bow, don't don't look at what your arrow is doing at rest. Look at what it's doing at full draw. Your stabilizer runs in the center of your riser.
yes.
So when you get to full draw, look at your stabilizer in reference to your arrow. It won't be centered.
Yes, okay, that's,
It'll
that's,
be off.
yes, and so that's, I was wondering if that's what you were referencing. So I shot, before the Concept X, I shot a PSE Supra RTX.
Mhm.
And that bow did exactly what you're talking about. Like the stabilizer would not be pointing straight at the target; it'd be pointing off to the right, I believe. And I mean that was probably the worst bow I've ever seen to do that. I always got it to tune great, and it was a great bow. But it had something to do with the cables pulling. A lot of people blamed it on hand torque, but I know that I don't torque my grips. I know several other people that were getting the same stabilizer movement out of that bow. It was just the way it was designed. But that makes perfect sense.
No, it is hand torque.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Well, think about it. You're a right-handed shooter, so your stabilizer is pointed to the right, correct?
Yes.
And left-handed, it'll point to the left, and here's why. When you hold the bow, you literally have nothing on this side applying any type of force or pressure to this edge of your grip. This side you do because your hand's right there. Even though your riser sets in your hand like this, your fingers are like this. So this side of your hand is touching this side of your grip. So that is what is making the bow kind of cant a little bit to the right. And a left-handed person is the other way, and it'll cant to the left. It is bow torque. You're not gripping it, but it's just a ever so slight amount of pressure from this edge of the riser on this edge of your hand.
Okay. I can
The only
definitely.
the only way to alleviate that is to shoot flat-handed like this. But once you release that trigger, what's your bow gonna do?
It's fallen. So the only thing that I have to say, so that's probably a big part of it. Now, the only thing that the other factor that I'm thinking about is when I put my bow in the hooter shooter, right?
Mhm.
And you've got that that peg or like a draw board, anything. I still get that same torque out of the stabilizer. And my theory is it has to do with the cable guard pulling those cables off to the side, and then the cables when you're at full draw and you're at you got a 75% let off bow or whatever, and there's not very much tension in that string. My theory is that's what's causing some of that torque,
It does
and
some of it, yes.
it could be a combination of the grip and
Both.
both.
Well, here's
Yes.
here's something else to look at too. When you draw your bow back, like in the hooter shooter or a draw board, look at your limbs. Look at the limb tips. They won't be even because your cables on this side pull on this side of the cam a little more than your bowstring pulls on this side of the cam. Especially if you have one of the older bows where both your cables are on the same side of your cam. So it pulls on that one side more. So instead of your limb tips, when you draw your bow, instead of your limb tips bending even, the side that your cables are on will bend just a little bit more. That's why you get the cam lean.
Yes. So, okay. So have you, and I'm not sure if Hoyt does this or not, but I know that PSE will write on their limbs, there'll be a number on there, 126. And then, if you tear your bow apart and you look at the limbs, one will be numbered 126. The other one will be 123, 118, 124. So you've got your 4 limbs and they've all got these different numbers on them. A lot of times from the factory, those numbers, those numbers represent the deflection of that limb.
Mhm.
Every limb deflects a different amount, and then they'll mark that on the limb for you. That way, uh, most of the time it comes in the right configuration from the factory. But I always like to look at them and put the stiffer limbs on the side that, like you were saying, when the limbs come down and one flexes more than the other, I always like to put the stiff limb on that one side to try to make them even again. If that
And
makes sense.
yeah, it does. It makes perfect sense. Going back to the very beginning where we was talking about, I took my bow apart just to see how it all worked and all that, and I saw those numbers on my limbs. And when I put it back together, I made sure that I put it back in the same order. And then after I got to shooting it for a little while, somebody told me about that. And I was like, well, I already know what the numbers are because I tore my bow apart and I put it back together and I was having an issue with some cam lean. And they said, well, flip your limbs. I was like, okay, so what does that do? And then that's when they proceeded to explain to me that what those numbers mean. I flipped my limbs and that took the cam lean out when I got the full draw. Now, here's the thing. that I have found out, and Hoyt does it too, I know for a fact, all the limbs on the bows are the same deflection.
Yes.
But just because the numbers are the same doesn't mean that the deflection is exactly the same. So, for example, you get your bow and the deflection on your limbs is supposed to be 60-pound limbs. You may have one that's 60 pound and one that's 60 and a half or 61 and 3/4 pounds. They still classify it as a 60-pound limb. Well, if it's on the wrong side, you're going to get that cam lean, flip those limbs. So what I do when I get a new bow, and I don't care if it's a Hoyt, a Martin, PSE, I don't care. If I get a new bow, the first thing I'm doing is I'm putting it in a draw board and I'm going to draw it back to full draw. And I look to see what my cam is doing. And I do it at full draw. I don't care what it is doing at rest. It can lean all it wants to at rest. What matters is what it's doing when you get the full draw, because that's when it's under its pressure, when it's under its torque. And when you let it go, you want it to run back. You know what I'm saying? If you've got is straight at full draw, when it goes back, that arrow's going to be gone before that cam lean takes over.
Yes.
But if you've got cam lean at full draw, when you release, that arrow is doing whatever that cam is doing, and when it comes off that string, it's going to keep doing that through flight.
Yes.
I don't care about cam lean at rest. I want it straight when I get to full draw.
Okay, so when you get that new bow and you take apart the limbs, so like from Hoyt, when the limbs are unmarked, how do you?
No, they are marked.
Are they? Okay.
Yeah, when you take it out of the limb pocket, it's written on the very end of the limb.
Okay. On
So
the concept
you can't see it. You literally have to take it out of the limb pocket in order to see it. Matter of fact, give me 1 sec. Just so happens I have a set of Hoyt limbs. And so I don't know if you can see that. All of Hoyt's limbs are marked like this. It's like I said, you can't see it until you take it out of the limb pocket, because when it goes in the limb pocket, that's against the inside of the pocket. You can't see it.
Yes. Okay.
And so if you have cam lean, once you get the full draw and you take the bow apart, look at your limbs. And what I'll do is I'll take a piece of masking tape and I'll put it on the limb and I'll write on that masking tape, upper left, and then upper right, bottom left, bottom right. So when I take the bow apart, the limbs are marked and I can see, okay, well, the deflection is the same, but I've got some cam lean at full draw. So I'm going to flip the 2 upper ones and then I'm going to flip the 2 bottom ones, put the bow back together, and I take my tape off, flip them around and put them back on the right side. And then I check it again for the cam lean.
Okay. Yes, I'm going to have to do that now that you say that. I've not done that with the Hoyt because, I'll tell you why. A couple years ago, me and the family had gone out to Salt Lake City because there was a total archery challenge out there, out there in Park City. We went out there for a total archery challenge. And long story short, we ended up taking a tour at the Hoyt factory. And I remember walking through, they're showing us all the big, CNC machines and all the stuff they were doing in there. And one of the machines that they showed us was the limb deflection machine. And they would literally take every limb and put it in this clamp, and it would clamp one end of it. And then there was this arm that came down, and it bent the limb over. And that arm somehow attached a gauge to it, and it read the deflection on it. And then until they would take that limb out, and depending on what the deflection was, they would put it back over on the sander and sand it down a little bit more, and then put it back in there, test it again until it met a certain specification for deflection. And so I was under the impression that they were all the same deflection, but it sounds like they're not.
Well, there's a tolerance there, a plus or minus.
Yes.
And that's where that not being the same comes in. Like I said, you could have one, let's just say they're supposed to be 60 pound. You could have one that is exactly 60 pound, but then you got one that's 60 and a half.
Yeah.
Well, that half can make a big difference at full draw in your cam lean. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Always a tolerance. Yep.
Right. Yeah, there's always a tolerance. And it doesn't matter what it is. Like, there's a tolerance for your limb pocket. It has to fit a certain on on the riser. There can only be so much play in there where that goes onto your riser. If it's too much, it's just going to wobble around. If it's not enough, when they powder coat it or, Cerakote, whatever it is they do to the risers, if it's not, it won't go on the riser. So there's a tolerance in there that they're allowed, plus or minus, and it'd still be able to work. That's with any bow. Check your axle to axle. They'll advertise, and all the companies do it. All of them do it. They advertise a bow at, let's just say, 38 inches axle to axle. Take that bow right out of the box, lay it on the counter, and measure it axle to axle. It won't be 38-inch axle to axle. There's an 1/8 inch either direction of tolerance because of string length, string stretch, all that. That is going to play into that tolerance.
Yes.
And so, like on my Concept X's, my Concept X 40, the purple one that I have is supposed to be 40-inch axle to axle. It was actually 39 7/8. So it was just a hair short. I don't care about that, but I don't want it long. And my red one did come in about, not quite, but almost 1/8 of an inch long. I just added 2 twists to both cables and 2 twists to my bowstring, and that put it right at 40-inch axle to axle.
Perfect. So a lot of times, you get a new bow in and, you ordered a 70-pound bow, but it's actually 71 pounds or 72 pounds. Is that kind of where that's coming from?
That overweight, I wish more companies did that like that. Uh, what that overweight is for is because they call it string stretch. The strings don't stretch. They settle. Have you ever gotten a new bow and actually just like run your fingers down the string? It's really rough and all out of shape and all that. But
Yes.
after you shoot it and get like, 350, 400 shots through it, you can run your fingers down and it's nice and smooth and slick like a rope. What
Yeah.
happens is those strings are different strands that are laid out on the machine. They twist them up and then they stretch them and serve them, do what it is they do. But those strands are not laying flat against each other. They're kind of all been out of shape.
Yeah.
Well, as you shoot the bow, the vibration, the pull, the stretch, all that, it pulls and relaxes. And eventually those strings settle into each other. Well, when it settles in, it lengthens because it's all settling together. It's lengthening out. It's not stretching. It's just literally settling in. And that makes it a little longer. So,
Yes.
like, if you take a brand new string off of a bow that you just literally took out of the box, take the string off and put it on a string stretcher at exactly 100 pounds, and then measured it, put it back right on the bow, shoot 350 shots, and then put it back and put it exactly at 100 pounds, it's going to be just a slight bit longer because the strands have settled together.
That makes
That makes
sense.
it
Yeah.
that makes it longer. That's why the strings get smooth and slick after you shoot them for a while.
Yeah. So
Well,
the
in doing so now your bow is like this when you get it because the strings are so short. That's why you're 71 pounds or 72 pounds instead of 70. But after your strings settle in and they lengthen out, your limbs relax a little bit, you lose that 2 pounds of draw weight.
Okay, that makes sense. I picture it kind of like if you're like basketballs or something, or golf balls, probably a better example. You're stacking golf balls, and there's that certain alignment where they're just offset to where they all kind of mash in there, and you can fit the most golf balls in a container per unit of measurement versus just a random scatter in there. I
Exactly.
picture the strands are kind
Exactly.
of like a random scatter, and then they just kind of all, come together, and then, they line up perfect and fit right in.
Here's a better way to do that. Take a cup and just take rice, just pour rice in it, and it'll fill the cup up. But if you tap it, that rice will all settle together and form into its own little pocket against each other, and that will go down. The
Yes.
amount will go down. The string is the same way. When they first make them, they're not all settled in. They're not in each other's little pocket against each other. Well, as that happens, it lengthens. It's
Yes,
the
that's a
same
great example.
concept.
Exactly. That's good to know. So, getting back to before we end this off here, I want to talk about Lancaster a little bit.
Lord.
we were at Lancaster. That's where we met. It was quite interesting this year. There's some changes. So we'll start off at the beginning of the weekend. When did you drive up there? I assume you drove.
Yep, I drove up. I left down here in South Georgia Wednesday immediately after work, 6 o'clock, and I got up there Thursday afternoon at 1. Went straight to the shoot site, and because I had to go see some of my sponsors and stuff, so I went straight to the shoot site. I shot a few arrows that day, not a lot. I think I maybe did a little over half a round. I think I shot 7 ends maybe that day, and then the next day I went in early, and I started out. I shot half a round, and it was really good. So I waited a little while, and then I went back and to shoot again, and it was a disaster.
Really?
Yeah, it was a disaster. Now, the first time I shot, I was in the one practice range downstairs. The second time I shot, I went to the one upstairs. And I think it was the difference in the lighting that affected how I was seeing the targets. And so I just chalked it up to that.
Now, there is another thing I've heard about the upstairs, and I felt it myself. The floor shakes up there.
It doesn't shake, it bounces.
Okay.
Like if you set your bow down and watch your bubble in your scope, you'll see it actually bounce.
Yeah, that's interesting. I have yet to shoot in that upper practice range in the last 4 years I've been there, just because I've heard of the floor bouncing up there.
It
But
does.
yeah,
You'll be at full draw and you're trying to keep your pin in the middle and it's doing this.
yes.
And
And
it's not you, it's the floor move.
yeah, and for anybody who hasn't been to Lancaster, like this is a huge facility. I mean, how many acres under roof is it? Somewhere around 15 is what I've heard.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around 15, 18 acres underground or under a roof. This place is massive.
Yes, multiple stories. This is one of the largest, indoor sports complexes in America is what I've heard.
I think it is the largest.
Really? Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, so this place is massive, and I highly doubt Lancaster Archery Classic will ever outgrow it. I mean, maybe they'll open up some more rooms in the building for the shooters, but I can't ever see them outgrowing this facility. I mean, it is really big, it's really nice, but one big thing that they had to kind of redo, and this whole weekend, I know just about everybody in the east and in the north was feeling this, and even in the south, some places, was the big snowstorms that we got this week. Like me, I was out of school all week. Like we got the entire week off of school. We had some some sort of record snows and stuff like that. Sounds like that was all over the place. But I remember Thursday, and I shot my qualification round Thursday. I assume you shot Friday, right?
Yep, I shot Friday.
Thursday, we were starting to hear rumors about them, canceling Sunday because of the weather that was coming in. And I wasn't, at that point, it was just rumor. And then sure enough, the next day, Friday, we got the email that said, hey, we're canceling everything Sunday. But I thought the great part is that most of the time when they cancel a day at a tournament like that, that means somebody gets to miss out on shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Lancaster, the people at Lancaster, they're great at what they do. Everybody that was supposed to shoot an arrow that weekend got to shoot all of their arrows.
All of them, including the shoot-offs.
Including the finals, which was pretty amazing. I remember it was Saturday. No, it was Friday afternoon. That was kind of a rest day for me because I'd already shot my qualification. I went over to the practice range, the downstairs practice range, and I was shooting, and all of a sudden, the whole Lancaster staff comes down there and says, hey guys, we're gonna have to cut off practice here in a few minutes because they're gonna set up that second final stage. And sure enough, by the next day they had an entire new final stage set up there. They had all the the sponsor banners and stuff said 2026 on it. They had stages built up. Like, I don't know if they had guys working all night to
12
build all
hours. It took them 12 hours to set that up because they did the lighting and everything.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty amazing. I mean, and who knows how much they spent on extra camera equipment and, manpower to get that done, but,
Well, absolutely,
they
and to be able to do it in such a short amount of time like they did, dude, that was amazing.
Yes. Yeah, I think they really hit it out of the park there. And that's one of the reasons why so many people love the classic, right? It's an unaffiliated event, right? So it's not like the Vegas shoot is affiliated with NFAA. You've got all these associations, organizations, NFAA, USA Archery. I'm sure I'm missing some.
ASA.
ASA, yes, that's a big one. This is just a lone event. This is not governed by anybody. It is just Lancaster, which I think allows them to have some of the flexibility to do things like this. And it's run unlike any other tournament out there. It's really impresses me. I mean, it's probably my favorite shoot to attend every year. I think it's just really well run. I think they do a great job.
I
But
think they do an excellent job at it, to be honest with you. The way it always runs super smooth. When you get something like that going, there's going to be little hiccups. There's no way around it. But the way that they handle them and solve them, I mean, it's almost instantaneous. It's like they've been doing it for 100 years.
yes.
I've been to shoots where, a little bitty hiccup creates this big, huge domino effect. And at the Lancaster shoot, that little bitty hiccup is literally what it is. It doesn't get any further because it's take care of right then and there, and it runs so smooth, you don't even notice it unless you're there and witness it or whatever. You don't even know about it until somebody tells you, "Well, I didn't know that happened."
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I can go to just about any shoot and always find at least a couple things that they could improve on, whether it's, you need more practice space, which is a big one in a lot of shoots,
Yes.
or the bales are all shot up, worn out, whatever it is. There's always some sort of something hiccup that you can find at just about every shoot. But Lancaster, it's pretty hard to find um, it's pretty hard to find places where they can improve, which, I'm glad to see the tournament growing. Like, I think they had record attendance again this year. It's just all around great shoot, I think, from bow hunters all the way up to, top level pros.
The new classes, I mean, like the longbow class, barebow classes,
Yes.
those exploded this year with the amount of participants that they had. And the thing I like about this, especially this shoot, Vegas is kind of the same way though, but the thing I like about this shoot is the age groups. I mean, you literally have little kids running around, 6 years old that are shooting in this tournament all the way up to, I think there was somebody there that was like 80, 85 years old shooting
Yeah.
and everything in between. You have that at Vegas, but not on that big of a scale, I don't think.
Yeah, I agree. And I know a big thing too is not only do they have a 50 plus class, but they have a 60 plus class too, which is really
There's a
popular.
70 plus class.
Is there? Okay, I didn't
Yeah.
even know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, there is a 70 plus class. Because
Wow.
like I shoot in the 50 plus, which they classify that as masters. But
Yes.
then there's the class that is the 60 and up. They call that what is it? It's
Senior, I
something.
thought.
No, seniors are the like the open pro guys. It's I want to say they call it's something masters, and that just means that they're the next age group up. But yeah, I was actually talking to a gentleman there that he was in his 70s and he was shooting.
Yeah, that's impressive. I hope to be as cool as he is when I get to be that age.
I hope
Still
I
out
can
there
pull a
shooting.
bow back at that age.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
70 years old, and he was just, I mean, he pulled his bow back like you and I do ours now, and we're considered, young compared to him, and he's just
Yeah.
like it's no big deal.
Yep.
I'm like, really?
And then the other thing is unlike a lot of tournaments, you can be shooting on a bale with a 6-year-old, you could be shooting on a bale with a 80-year-old, or you could be shooting on a bale with a open pro. Like that's one thing that I really like about it too is like you're not really peer grouped. You get to shoot with just about anybody. I mean, I know that a lot of people would make their day to shoot on a bale with, guys like Bodie Turner or Matthias. Like,
Well, and the thing about it is too, you may be shooting. Let's just say you're shooting recurve, but you're shooting on a bell with one of the open pro guys shooting a compound. This one over here that's on the bell with you is shooting an Olympic style recurve, and this one's shooting bow hunter class. It's a mix. I mean, you may get on a bell with 4 compound shooters all shooting the same class, but it's a random thing. You may not.
Yeah, yeah, and I really like it that way. It just kind of makes it a super, chill event. Like nobody's super stickler about scores and calling arrows or anything. But yeah, it's really well run.
Well,
And
and one of the things that I found this year was my 4th year doing the Lancaster shoot. And one of the things that I found is by doing it that way, you don't get that extra added pressure to perform and shoot well like you would once you're peer grouped and you're shooting on the same bell as 4 other guys that you're actually shooting against, competing against in your class. That that anxiety and that little extra pressure is non-existent when they do it the way they do.
yes, yes, and I mean that's why I think it's so attractive to so many different people to go there. It's more of just a fun shoot for so many people than it is, a competition because there you just don't feel that same pressure. Now, if you flip it over to Saturday, right, the eliminations, like there's where pressure is definitely there. It's definitely felt. If you make the cut and make it to Saturday, eliminations can be they are what they are. I think that eliminations can be good and bad at the same time. Like you might not be the top ranked archer in your class, but you've still got a chance to win it. Uh, and if you look at it the other side, you might be the top qualified shooter in your class, but you might get knocked out in eliminations and take 30th place or whatever.
Right. And well, see, that actually happened in my class in the Masters Pro Division. Branch Schleusner actually was the top qualifier, but he got knocked out in the 2nd round of elimination, so he didn't even make the shoot up.
Yeah, yeah, that's how I was. I was the 3rd qualifier in my class, and I got knocked out in the 2nd match as well.
Yeah, so
Which it's just how the cards fall, I guess. But that's the fun of it too, because somebody that's ranked, 30 class has got a chance to beat out all those, 2nd, 3rd place qualifier guys and
right,
make it to the stage, which is pretty amazing too.
right. The only drawback or the only thing that I think is a negative for the Lancaster shoot is cutoff line. I think, like, I know in the women's pro division, the Masters pro division, and I think there's a couple of others, the cutoff line is 16. And so they only take the top 4 to the shoot off or the shoot up, as they call it.
Yes.
I think that, like, I know the women's pro and the Masters pro. The Masters pro had 59 shooters, and the women's pro, I think, had 47. So they could break that down to where they could do a top 8 in a shoot up, just like they do the rest of the classes.
Yes, I see what you're saying. I think that now the biggest limiting factor on that is one time, right? It's hard to cram that many shooters in on like the final stage as well as during eliminations. I think that's why they put the cutoff where it is
Yep.
because there's just a time and space limitation. Now I
But
think that
why?
they
Okay, but why limit a pro division to only the top 16, but you're doing top 32 in an amateur division?
Yeah, that's a good point. And there's where that's one thing that they can improve. I'd like to see them if they could open up like another room in the facility to be able to run like 2 qualification or elimination lines where they can fit more and they can start taking more people from each class. I think that'd be great.
Well,
I think that
you could do the same amount of lines, but put 4 on a bell. So, like, the top 2 on the target are shooting against each other. They're trying to, battle it out, see who's moving on, and the 2 below, they're battling it out to see who's moving it on.
yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
So
there's
you could run 2 lines at the same time. You see what I'm saying?
yeah, there
Just
could
like they
definitely
do
be
in the
some
tournament.
yeah, there could definitely be some efficiencies built in there.
On top of that, when it does come time for these shoot ups, they could do like they did this Saturday, run 2 different shoot up things.
Yes. Now
Run
the
them, run
only
them, run them at the same time,
The only
just like they
disadvantage
did.
to that, the only disadvantage to that though, is the classes that are shooting in the alternate on the alternate stage don't get interviewed by PJ Riley. And now, of course, they've got other folks to do it, like Casey. Who else interviews? I know Josh Grind did it one year.
Casey's done it. Her brother's done it.
Yes, but I kind of want PJ.
Rob himself has done it.
Yeah, Rob hasn't he? Yeah, so it's kind of a trade off, and maybe that's just me, but I think that they will continue to grow, and I'm sure they're hearing the public's voices on this. I know there's lots of people that would agree with us right now, and I know that they're working to fix that.
The one thing I gotta say is the rule change for the 12 dot.
Okay.
I love the fact that they did the change to where you can save all 4 of your to the last 4 arrows that you've got to shoot, instead of limiting you to 1 per end by allowing you to call them as your last 4 arrows. I think that was huge. I know
Yes.
Mike Colbert Sr., he did that in the Masters Pro Division in his shoot-off. He called the 12 his last 4 arrows. He hit 3 of the 4.
Yeah, that's great. I think that it was kind of funny. Like, we were doing a practice match for Lancaster at a local shop. We had a bunch of good shooters there, and we were running, the head-to-head matches, kind of like on the final stage. And I got to read in the finals rules, and I saw that rule was in there, that you can shoot. Before, it was only you could shoot 1 per end, which totaled out to be 4, but if you didn't shoot a 12 in the first end, then the maximum you could shoot is 3, which now you can shoot the 4, which is huge. I think it's a big rule change, but nobody was talking about it until like the week of Lancaster. It was kind of funny. I had made a post on Facebook, Instagram that day when I found out about it. I just said, hey, letting everybody know, the rules changed in Lancaster, and I hadn't heard anything about it. And sure enough, that post kind of blew up a little bit, and people are like, "Oh, whoa, I didn't know that." But I think it's a great change. I think it threw in a little bit more challenge in the mix.
Oh, I totally agree. Because now you don't know what your opponent, is he going to shoot his last 4 arrows as a 12, or is he not going to shoot them at all? And so it really adds that little bit of pressure that you have to hit that 11 to stay, with your opponent or get ahead of your opponent, just because of that reason, especially
Yes.
for the guys that run the great big dots, that cover up most of the yellow. Unless they are readjusting their sight and still aiming middle, there's no way they're seeing that dot.
Oh yeah. I mean, personally, I've got a ring in there, and the ring is the size of one of those great big dots that almost covers up all the yellow, but it's basically one of those that I just took the center out of, and the hole in the center, I have it sized appropriately so that if I see the white of the 12 ring within that hole in the center of my ring, that means that I'm centered enough on it that I will hit it with 27s. I've got it dialed in towards it's the right size. And that's what I use. So I just drop it down, aim straight at the 12. For me, trying to click the sight is just too confusing. So I did not.
Well,
I didn't.
and then trying to get it back exact. I mean, you could be,
Yes,
2 clicks off, and depending on your setup, that 2 clicks off may be the difference between hitting the X and half shaft 10.
exactly.
I run a 10 thousandths pin.
Okay.
I've tried the dot thing, and I can shoot them, but I'm not as consistent with them as I am with a pen. So, like, I can show you, I've got pictures of targets where I've used a dot, and I've got, you know, probably 8 arrows inside of the 10, but it looks like literally somebody walked up there with a pencil and went tink, 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 and just poked holes inside of the 10. But with my dot or with my pen, I have a couple out here, but I've got a hole from where the majority of my arrows are hit. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, that makes sense. I've always drifted towards the ring, but I think that sight picture is just more of a preference thing. I think that there's not really a whole lot to it other than just what you like, what you prefer. Now there is some strategy there, but we can go over that in the next podcast. But
Right.
yeah, so leaving it off here, Chuck, sounds like you've got a lot of great information. about becoming a better shooter and, the journey that you've taken. But where do you see yourself, your social media, your shooting? Where do you see yourself going in the next couple years, 3 years?
Hopefully up. I'm putting in a lot of work to improve my shooting, and I'm putting it out there on social media and putting it out what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And hopefully it can help somebody else. And as far as the social media thing goes, I don't have a whole lot of followers. I think last time I looked, I think I was almost at 1900. Hopefully I can get a little more followers, because the more followers I get, the wider the range of my information can get out. So for example, you saw my videos and stuff on the Facebook, and that's how the conversation between you and I got started at Lancaster. Well,
Yes.
if you have a buddy that comes up to you and says, "Hey man, I've been having this problem, da 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 da," and you can say, "I know a pro that just went through this. You need to follow him on his Facebook. He's got the videos explaining what he did to fix his problem and how he solved it, all this." Hopefully that will expand and the reach will get a little bit more.
Yes. Yep. I think that's a great way to look at it. And, if you're listening to this podcast and you're not already following Chuck, head over to his Facebook, Chuck Competitive Archer, right?
Yes.
Yep. Go over
You can
there.
see, if you see this logo, that's the account right there.
Perfect. Yep. Life on a string. Um, all right. Yeah. So leave him a follow on Facebook. If you're listening to this podcast, you made it this far, you already know that he knows what he's talking about. But yeah. So other than that, I appreciate your time, Chuck. I think this has been a great episode. We covered a lot of stuff, got into the meat of some good target archery stuff. But yeah, I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me to come on the podcast with you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, we'll see you on the next one, Chuck.
Yes, sir.